Good day, Bear fans, and welcome, Coyote fans. My Tilton clutch is mounted to my flywheel. This is part 3 of the Tilton clutch. Alright, we're going to put the clutch, the Tilton clutch on. I have messed around with wiring for the past few days, and it's time to get the transmission back on the motor. In order to do that, we've got to get the clutch mounted and torqued to 35 foot-pounds per bolt, and according to Tilton's instructions. So here we go. I have the clutch in a box over here. I'm just going to get all my stuff together and film the install. So basically, you mount the clutch, put the bolts in lightly by hand, twist the alignment tool so that the plates are aligned before they touch the surface of the clutch itself, or the flywheel. Because once you tighten them down, you're really not going to turn them unless you can disengage the clutch. So following the rules, that's where I'm at. So let's do it. Also, anyways, that's where we're going to. Alright, well, the first part of this clutch install went south pretty quickly. That is our clutch alignment tool. It's a 23 count spline, but I think it's for, I don't know, a truck or something. This is the right one. Fits the clutch plates just fine. However, this is a down-underism, I'm sure. That's the clutch alignment tool that doesn't fit the plates. This is the clutch alignment tool that does. So I'm going to have to tape around that nose until we get it to fit this. Alright, I got a little ahead of myself. I made a clutch alignment tool that works in my pilot bearing by padding it with tape. And I'm sure it's not 100% centered. I bet it's 99% centered. But one of the questions that Jason, my engineer at Tilton, my friend who's an engineer at Tilton, was worried about was the clearance of the Tilton clutch assembly with this ARP bolt setup. We had those washers that hold, that clear the M10, M12 situation, machined down to 70 thousandths, I think it was, thickness. And he just wanted to make sure that the clutch does not collide those bolt heads. Now, first of all, the bolt heads are, regardless of how it might appear, below the deck height of that indentation there. And second of all, I don't know if it's obvious here, but there might be a collision really deep into the wear of this, but I have a hard time imagining it. It looks like all the rivets and everything on this Tilton clutch are below. I'll just take this to illustrate. Those heads are definitely below the deck height of the clutch surface. So, just making sure before I bolt the whole thing together that we don't have collisions in this whole setup somewhere. And we do not. So, back to putting the thing back together. Getting practiced at it. So the procedure, according to the documentation I read, is that you seat all these bolts by hand. You hand tighten them down to where the Tilton clutch is the whole clutch pack is basically centered on this thing. That's what this register is for. There's no pins on this clutch assembly. It's just the bolts, and they're high precision. You hand tighten them to where the thing is settled, and then you do a quarter of a turn in a star pattern around this bolt pattern until the whole thing is touching. And then at that point you do your 35-pound torque. And of course all this depends upon thread lock being used, so I'm triple applying thread lock today, just because I'm a doofus and went in the wrong order. But we're gonna have thread lock, we're gonna have 35 psi, pounds per inch rather, foot-pounds, excuse me, and we're gonna have this thing put together. Here we go. Well, let's check this. I think I went to a lot of work and it's not, plates aren't properly aligned in there. Maybe it's just an optical illusion. Let's have a look. That doesn't look lined up at all to me. Well, it's hard to see, but I think my primary disc on my Tilton clutch is not centered, and I'm afraid when I bolted it together with this alignment tool that since this one wasn't aligned properly, that one compensated in the bore so that this whole thing was off. And when I was checking my alignment tool after the clutch was torqued down all the way, I came across that, and I had to stop. So I took the clutch back off, and I'm going to consult with. All right, looks like we finally did get our alignment tool aligned. I had to take the clutch off the car, and with some coaching from my engineering friend and a sledgehammer. Wasn't really hard taps. It was mainly just getting that. This is the primary disc here, and it has to be centered for the secondary disc to be centered properly, and it wasn't very clearly when I took the whole thing apart. It was, or rather, when I had it all bolted on, torqued down, I went to look at the alignment tool, and it was like in cockeyed. So off to the races again. I cleaned all the bolts of thread lock, and I mean took the whole thing out, cleaned all the bolts of thread lock, cleaned everything up, cleaned all the surfaces with acetone, make sure everything's smooth, and we are going to reassemble it again, torque everything back down again. But I'm going to start by putting thread lock on each one of these bolts in order, and then I'm going to torque them down the way that the book says. So basically, to make it clear, you tighten these bolts here by hand to where this thing is scrunched down by hand, and it's tricky because this register in here that this clutch is pushing down on is like the thing that centers everything. So it has to be centered on that register, and I've got it kind of there right now. Just with this alignment tool and some visual inspection, I just need to tighten everything down a quarter of a turn at a time until the thing is contacting this flywheel. And then from there, I'm going to torque everything down again in a star pattern to 35 psi. So here. All right, so looks like we have the clutch installed. I did do some realigning of the clutch plates. Possibly they settled in shipping. Given how easy it is to move them the wrong way, it's possible I got them myself somehow at some point during the install of the clutch. But I got it centered this time during the install, and I carefully tightened these bolts down. Installed thread lock on all of them. They're to 35 psi, each one of these bolts. So our clutch is in there. This alignment tool comes in and out pretty easy. I did twist it at one point to make sure that while it was loose, that clutch, the two clutch discs were in real alignment, so when the transmission slides in, everything's good. So I think we're good to do the next step, which is to install the slave master cylinder to Tilton spec, which involves some measuring, and it's not really that complicated, but I've started doing that on the transmission. And this is all exciting because basically, I don't know if you can see some of the wiring coming together on the motor. Once we get the transmission back on, I have to bolt the motor into the car along with the K-member and cut two high pressure power lines, and those are AM fitting lines, and cut I think it's 4 low pressure lines, and we're done to get ready for first start. So having this clutch installed, big part of the equation. We're almost to first start. So I'm going to pass this video along to Tilton Engineering, make sure that I've done this right, and then I'm going to go from there. So hope you're enjoying the ride. Don't forget to subscribe. This is part 3 of the Tilton clutch install. This is the actual clutch install. Part 4 will be the slave master cylinder install, and then there probably will be a part 5 to set the the clutch master cylinder. The clutch slave cylinder will be installed. That'll be part 4, and then clutch master cylinder will be part 5. So hope that makes sense. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe.